Shalom, this is Levi Shore. Welcome back to Sweet and Good Torah. Right, we're about to start the 3 weeks, which is often referred to as the Bein Hametzarim, between like the pressures, the obstacles, the constraints. And it's a 3 week period from the 17th of Tammuz until Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Ab. And we're gonna learn today the Nesivos Shalom, and he brings a very fascinating conversation between the Greek philosopher Plato and Yirmiyahu HaNavi and Jeremiah the prophet. I heard about this incredible conversation. They had many conversations, maybe in Alexandria, in the Delta region of Egypt, and the Nesivos Shalom. He brings this, so we're going to learn from his Sefer Day. And this is very special to me because my first year, I was teaching physics at Rav Schlanger's yeshiva. The students, they got me this beautiful set of Sfarim for teaching him that year, and I haven't really had a chance to really learn it much, and it's a great teaching here. I'm really excited now to learn more of the Nesivos Shalom. So he's going to tell us about the conversation here. It's a great meaning about the 3 weeks and Tisha B'Av and just what we're doing in this period. It's really beautiful. So he says that, he says that there was a conversation between the philosopher Plato and Yirmiyahu HaNavi and Jeremiah the prophet, and he saw him. He was going through like Lamentations. He was doing the kinos on I guess on Tisha B'Av, and he was crying over the Chorban of the Beis Hamikdash, the destruction of the temple. So Plato, after I guess speaking with Yirmiyahu for a period of time, he became convinced that he was great. He's filled with great amount of wisdom. Like, this was a very wise person. And he couldn't understand. He wanted to ask him. And his question was, how is it appropriate that a chacham, a wise man like yourself, is crying over the past? It's an interesting question. Like, Plato has an interesting question here. Like, what is it? What are you going to gain? You're crying over something that's already happened. He says, like, the Beis Hamikdash, the temple has already been burned, and it doesn't exist. This is all in the past. And there's no toelis, there's no benefit, there's no help to your crying. And he's saying, why, a wise man of your stature, why are you crying? So Yirmiyahu answers him back, and he says, he said, I would not be able to answer you on this question because you will not be able to understand the answer. It's a great way to answer a philosopher, right? So he says this aspect of the meaning and the importance of Avelus, of mourning, that what it is, it's a desire, it's all the deeply held emotions and desires, and it's expressing the nefesh. It's expressing the soul, what the soul feels, what the emotions of the soul. And through this, and then I'll bring this up on the screen. He brings Tehillim Samach Gimel. It's Psalms 63. Let me bring that up on the screen. We'll take a look at it. And let me find. So we'll bring that up here. So this, you can look it up yourself if you want. So it's Psalms 63. And he goes on, and Yirmiyahu begins his answer. And he quotes King David here, David HaMelech. He says, Mizmor LeDavid, Biyoso b'midbar Yehuda. He says this is a song that came to David when he was in the wilderness of Yehuda. And he says, Elokim Eli. He says, Shem, even your aspect of judgment, you are my God. He says, Ata Ashechareka, and I will search for you. Sama lecha nafshi, my soul, it thirsts for you. And kama lecha besari, and my body, it yearns for you. So what does this all mean? Okay, so Yirmiyahu is going to explain here what he's saying to Plato. And why is he bringing this to Tehillim from David? And he's saying here that what David was saying is that David was far from the Beis Hamikdash. So even in the days, this is incredible, even in the days of David HaMelech, even in the days of King David, the great holiness of King David, and he's going to begin the whole line of kings of Yehuda, which is going to lead to Mashiach ben David, who's going to come and rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. But in David's days, there was no temple. So he's calling the area of Yehuda in the land of Israel, he's calling it a midbar. It's just a wilderness. If Hashem's temple is not there, even during the days of King David, the land of Yehuda, it's just a wilderness. It's just a midbar. It's empty. There's no life. It says, because lo hayelo es haor elokus, there's not the godly light, shehayir bebeis hamikdash, that illuminates, that shines on the temple. And she'av az kol chiyoso, and it's drawing out all of his life. And he's saying, Metzama lecha nafshi. He's saying, my soul thirsts for you, Hashem. Like, we're not close. That was a Navi, but he's saying, without the base of Mikdash, without the temple, we're not close. He's saying, Kama lecha besari, my flesh longs for you. And this, Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah is explaining, this is the whole subject of Avelus, of mourning and bechios, of crying, Shel Yisrael al Churban Beis HaMikdash. This is the whole aspect, why we're crying over the destruction of the temple. And it's all the longings and desires and the expressions of the great revelation of the light of Hashem that illuminated the world during the time that the Beis HaMikdash Hayikayam, that when the temple stood, Hashem's infinite light was revealed in the world. And he says, written in the Sharei Havoda of Rabbeinu Yonah, and he says that the time that the Bayis was built, there was all that time an aspect of standing at Har Sinai, standing at Mount Sinai. And it was a level of nevuah, it was a level of prophecy, and even beyond that. And to understand the answer of Yirmiyahu, he's saying he can't explain the meaning of the crying because Plato's not going to understand. And he's saying the level of the desire for Hashem's light, that he's saying that someone outside the Jewish people, someone who has never experienced this, they're not going to be able to understand and grasp it. And then to add on to this, the Nesivos Shalom, he brings, I'm not sure exactly, he quotes here Maran Haramach. I'm not sure exactly who this is. And he brings up a pasuk from Shmos, from the book of Exodus. Let me bring that up here. So now here he's talking about when Miriam was following Moshe Rabbeinu in the basket, when the little baby Moses was put by his mother Yocheved in the basket, and little baby Moshe was found by Basia, the daughter of the Pharaoh. And it says, V'tiftach, and Basia, she opened her eyes, V'tir'ehu esa yeled, and she saw the child in the basket, V'hine na'ar bocha, and the child was crying. So V'tachmo alav, and she had mercy, she had compassion on the child, on him, V'tomer miyalde ha'ivrim zeh, and she said that this must be a Hebrew child. So the Nesivos Shalom, he brings this, and it's fascinating, because the child was crying, Basia knew that Moses was Jewish, he was one of the Hebrews. So how did Basia know that? How did she know this Hebrew child just because he was crying? And he says here that that the crying, just by his crying, she recognized that he was a Yehudi, he was Jewish, he was a Jew. And she says, because she saw the crying was a bechi shel tikva, it was a cry of hope. Below bechi shel yeush, and it wasn't a cry of despair. And she says he must be from the Yaldei Ha'ivrim, he must be a Hebrew child, because he's crying a cry of hope. This is the cry of Yehudi. This is a cry of a Jew. And Masha'im Cain, even the more so, she's saying a non-Jew has a cry of despair. So there's an expression here, should be Rasan Zohi Misisatan, that when Hashem breaks us, all the tragedies that the Jewish people have gone through, it's made us who we are. It's, in a sense, it's a matana, it's a gift from Hashem. The suffering and the Ambadad being like the unique, isolated nation, all this has really built us into who we are. It says this reason is known even to the Jews, he says, in the days of the Holocaust, in the Yirmiyahu HaShoah. He says that even though to cry, he is not able to be in a state of despair. Even a Jew during the Holocaust was not able to be in a total state of despair. Because deep down in every Jew's neshama, deep down in every Jew's soul, they know that Hashem is there. And they know that Hashem can rescue us. So even in the depths of the horror of the Holocaust, he's saying incredible. He's saying that a Jew can't fully cry in a cry of despair, and it's still a cry of hope. And he's saying also that when a Jewish person cries over the Churban Beis HaMikdash, over the destruction of the temple, there's a secret there. It's a Bechia Shel Tikva. It's a crying of hope. And that from the majority, from the robe, from the Gagua, from all of his longing, and the Teshukaso, all of his desire for the Beis HaMikdash, for all the deep down emotions and feelings and desires to have the temple back, that's why the Jewish person is crying. And he says, this is what Yirmiyahu, this is what Jeremiah was not able to explain the meaning of the crying to Plato. He says, since you are not Jewish, he says, you're not going to be able to understand the crying of hope. Because for you, crying is merely an expression of despair. But automatically you ask that it's not fitting. You show that you think crying is only despair. And you show that because you ask this question that it's not fitting for a chacham, it's not fitting for a wise man to cry over the past. But he's saying for us, it's a bechia shel tikva. It's a cry of hope. And the crying is just the deeply held emotions and feelings and expressions and desire, not for the past, but for liasi lavo, for the future. And we are not crying over the past. And we learn halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, in Orach Chaim. It says it's permitted. He says, Shemuter livchos b'Shabbos, is permitted to cry on Shabbos. Since Shebechia shel Yehudi einat sa'ar al ha'avar, because the crying of a Jewish person, it's not pain over the past. Ela gaguim v'sikva li'asid. Rather, it's just expression of hope for the future. Pretty incredible stuff. So all the crying we've done this year, crying from Simchas Torah, from the day of the happiness of the Torah, we saw this horrible tragedy. The hostages still over 9 months, still today, there's still hostages in Gaza. And we're crying for the Jews that have been killed, and we're crying for the Jews that are captive. And we're crying we see the rising, the anti-Semitism all around us. But we're crying out for a purpose. And we begin to cry in these 3 weeks, and we begin to mourn. And so much to mourn this year, so much going on. But David HaMelech, he explained it best. What we're crying for the most is that we're in the Midbar Yehuda. Even though we're back in the land of Eretz Yisrael right now, we're back in the land of Israel, it's a Midbar. It's a wilderness. It's still desert because it doesn't have the Beis HaMikdash. And it's not illuminated by Hashem's infinite light. So Bezrat Hashem, when we mourn and all the mourning we've done, it's going to bring simcha in the future, simcha and sason, because the crying has a purpose, because we're crying for Hashem to restore to us our deep connection with Him and restore to us our connection, closeness to the Shekhinah in the Beis HaMikdash. Bezrat Hashem, may we quickly see during these 3 weeks the coming of Mashiach, and we see the revelation of Hashem's infinite light in the world again. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you back again soon on Sweet and Good Torah.